listen if you can. It tells you of the beauty in this state of Michigan.
Hi there, come on in. You know, if you enjoy ice fishing like we do, it's always fun to get out on these lakes to places you can't get in the summer. But there's one type of fishing you can do in the open water in the winter, and that's steelhead fishing, fishing for steelhead trout. This migratory rainbow trout that goes out in the Great Lakes and comes back into the streams to spawn. They're in our Michigan rivers right now. They're in good numbers, and they can be caught. Okay, conditions are a little rugged. Well, you come along. We'll show you how it's done. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night. Time to go steelhead fishing on Michigan Outdoors.
Major funding for this program is provided by STRO. By sharing the responsibility to preserve our natural treasures, together we ensure our right to enjoy them. STRO, partners in preserving America's outdoor heritage.
Michigan Outdoors is also brought to you statewide by the East Michigan Chevy Value Leaders, the nation's top-selling group of Chevrolet car and truck dealers, including Bill Kundinger Chevrolet in Linwood, Jim McCormick Motors in Pigeon, and Roger McIntosh Chevrolet Cadillac in East Tawas. The name of this river spans the entire distance across the southern Lower Peninsula. On the eastern half, it's a famous road that stretches to Detroit. On the western side, this watercourse is the famous Grand River itself. And where this river gently tumbles to a lower elevation, the town was aptly named Grand Rapids. The 6th Street Dam can be seen from the business district, the site of a fish ladder, a series of pools that salmon and steelhead trout can jump to bypass that downtown dam. And fish use this ladder year-round.
I don't either, but just a couple of guys over there, and that's it.
A week ago, Bob Garner donned his waders to join John Hesse from Lansing on a midwinter fishing expedition for steelhead trout.
Bob, maybe before we get in here, we ought to talk about where the fish hold a little bit. Now here below the dam, it's deep water and very turbulent water, and a lot of the spawn fishermen fish up here right off the face of the dam. They're standing in this rocky area and cast up in there.
But that's treacherous water. This white water in the undertow here has got to be awesome.
It is very dangerous, and I generally stay away from that area. It's very hard just to hold your balance in those rocks there, and I just don't feel comfortable with it. A lot of people do it and catch fish. So I think we'll start out here, and there's an area that runs down through the center of the river that's a little deeper, and we call it Center Run, and we'll work our way out to that, and then just along this east or west edge.
The steelhead trout are here, not in the slower water under the bridge, but stacked up in the faster water near the dam. John Hesse fishes steelhead far more than the average angler, and he's especially accomplished at the ins and outs.
Sometimes the best way to enter here is just to sit down and then sit there. Yeah, there's pretty big rocks in here.
Although this might look like any other fishing trip for trout, I have to caution you about the danger of this fast, cold water. Winter fishing like this in open water is more than hazardous. To tolerate the cold, you have to wear long underwear, plenty of warm clothing. You're not as nimble in these temperatures as you would be in the summer, and falling in 36-degree water can be fatal in a short period of time. It's nothing to toy with, and Bob Garner is extremely cautious as he battles the current against his legs and the slippery rocks under his boots. Steelhead trout like the fast current. Actually, they like to hang along the edge of it in deep runs and pockets that are just below the spillway. It's a matter of minutes before Bob Garner hooks one, which twists and fights using the current as leverage against the fishing rod. John Hesse is the net man, but you can see that John expects this fish to swim into the net. Backhanding the net across his body doesn't give him much power on this uncooperative fish. How do you take off your glove, hang onto your fishing rod, keep your balance in an icy stream, and net a spunky rainbow trout all at the same time? Well, it's not easy. This fish takes Bob Garner around 360 degrees as John bobbles his fishing rod, thinking now's the time it will slide into the net. This fish is a rainbow trout that grew to a large size because it migrated to Lake Michigan for a couple years, eating alewives, chubs, and smelt. These migrating rainbow trout are called steelhead by anglers, and bringing one to the net is a mighty accomplishment. Bob Garner can be proud not only of that fish, but of getting out and back with a dry pair of breeches. With a little firmer underpinning, Bob and John can take a good look at the steelhead that gave him such a tussle.
Well, we got a real champ here. Bob did a nice job on that.
Yeah, well, the big assist, too.
Beautiful. What do you think of that one, John? I'd say go about 9 pounds, John. 9 pounds?
I'll put the stringer on him first, and then I'll hold him up, or
Okay.
we'll do that. We'll make sure we got a hold of him.
You can see the pink rainbow stripe down its side, but it's a dark steelhead on its last spawning run. It went for John Hesse's favorite lure, a homemade spinner, a lure he fishes with almost exclusively. The Mepps spinner type is a classic.
Using a homemade spinner, a Mepps style spinner, and it's a fluorescent color chartreuse that the steelhead like a lot. A weighted spinner that's a whole lot like a real a Mepps, but we make our own. It only costs about 25 cents a piece, so we can afford to lose a bunch. But not a lot to it. You don't tie a snap and swivel on, just tie directly onto the line. You try to get it into the current and just let the current bring it across the run real slowly, and the fish will come up behind it. In this winter weather, the water's cold and the fish aren't as active, so you want to reel quite slowly, and they'll chase it to some degree, but you got to get it right in front of them if you can.
Rarely will you find any food in a steelhead stomach in the winter. They don't eat, but they seem to strike out of instinct, and taunting a steelhead with a spinner goads it into striking. That's all an angler needs if his hooks are sharp. This actually is the third steelhead these two have taken in a half hour.
There he is.
My legs here. Whoa!
Let me get him.
Oh, he's pretty.
Okay. I came close to him.
All right.
All right.
Nice
Whoa.
job.
What about eating steelhead trout like this? John Hesse loves them, and so does his family. But what about the chemical contamination? John says properly trimmed, he doesn't see any problem, and he ought to know. He studies toxic contamination in fish for the Michigan Department of Public Health.
Nice day. Well, they got a lot of nice color in them.
John often turns a few steelhead back each trip, and after he has one for the table, he says steelhead taste far better right out of the water, so he'll catch and maybe eat this one another day.
Jeff Hargan of Ypsilanti caught this largemouth bass that weighed in at 6 pounds 7 ounces fishing Rapala in Washtenaw County. Here's a 2 pound 2 ounce white bass that James Konechny of Freeland caught on the Tittabawassee River in Saginaw County using a minnow. They sure grow walleye big in Lake St. Clair, which is where Ted Copa of Madison Heights found this 9.5 pounder. Steve Nugent of Ada had to go out of state to get this big elk. It's a 6x6 he took in Superior County, Montana. Dennis Crawford of Byron took this 160-pound buck during the rut in early November. It was a 12-pointer with a 19-inch spread. And here's old friend Anthony Tannery. Oh, we know him as Tony. He fishes Lake St. Clair all summer long. He's taken a number of master angler fish, including this 14 3/4-inch moon eye that weighed in at 1 pound even. Tony took it while still fishing, and since this picture, Tony has also taken the new state record moon eye. It weighed in at 1 pound 5 ounces. A moon eye angler extraordinaire. Let's make Tony Tannery our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Fisherman of the Week. 83 wild turkeys have been planted so far this winter in southern Michigan. 59 of the birds came from Iowa. 24 were homegrown birds trapped and transplanted from growing Michigan flocks. The DNR is again conducting its winter bald eagle census. 389 bald eagles were counted last winter. Contact the DNR if you see a bald eagle. Fur prices continue to plummet. Raccoons that were $35 and $40 just a couple of years ago are now being bought by local fur buyers for $3 and $4. And auction prices, well, they aren't much better. Fish Chief John Robertson says the federal government's cutback on their sea lamprey control project could spell disaster for salmon and lake trout in Lakes Huron and Michigan. Walleye fishermen in Lake Erie could suffer too. And the preliminary deer harvest numbers for firearm, bow hunters, and muzzleloaders from the 1988 season show that the total take was up almost 8% over last year. That's 375,500 deer. According to a Detroit Free Press report, the DNR is proposing to cut about $10 million from its general fund budget to clean up toxic sites and landfill problems. Now, the DNR says they'll be replacing the money with money approved by the voters last November when they passed Proposal C. Now, what's the difference where the money comes from? Well, when Proposal C was being pushed by a number of conservation, environmental, and industrial, not to mention governmental big shots, it was supposed to be a source of additional, and there's the key word, additional monies to clean up the state's worst and most life-threatening environmental problems. It was supposed to be something extra, something more we could do to protect our kids and future generations. I worried privately that the money was not going to be spent where it was promised, but I was assured by a number of folks involved in the campaign that that was not going to happen, and to go ahead and support it. But here it is, staring us right smack dab in the face. So what to do about it? Well, DNR Director David Hale should jump in with both feet and call this whole plan off. To continue with this $10 million shell game is a breach of the good faith of Michigan's voters, and that's government at its worst.
Peter Lucido from Port Huron is a rabbit hunter. He asked about rabbit hunting coverage on Michigan Outdoors. He says the season is 7 months long and rabbits should be Michigan's #1 game animal. Why can't you do more on rabbit hunting? Well, Peter, we usually try to work in at least 1, sometimes 2 rabbit hunting features during a year, but they present a couple unique problems for television. One is that rabbits are extremely difficult to follow on videotape. The cameraman has only a few seconds to capture the bunny before it's gone, and it always appears without warning. So the few shots we've gotten, we've had to run in slow motion. But Bob Garner and I love rabbit hunting, and we'll try again this year to capture America's #1 game animal on tape.
The Perch Point Conservation Club is sponsoring a winter carnival and fishing contest Friday through Sunday at Marine City. The Flint Bowmen hold their annual snowshoot Saturday, January 14th. That's an archery-only event. Fred Trost Hunting and Fishing Museum will be open Saturday and Sunday with a collection of tapes from Big Buck Night and the Fishing Banquet running continuously. The museum is located 1 block north of the State Police Post on Old 27 at Houghton Lake. Tip Up Town USA runs 2 weekends, January 21st and 22nd, and the 28th and 29th at Houghton Lake. It's a real carnival on the ice, complete with fishing contests. Our Stroh's Fishing Awards Banquet takes place Friday, February 24th, and the best fish stories of the year will be on tap. We'll have it all from big bluegills to monstrous muskies. And you can see the biggest elk, bear, deer, and turkeys at the Hunting Awards Banquet on February 25th. Now, this banquet is always an early sellout with very good reason. It's the cream of the crop of the really big game. Tickets are available now. You won't want to miss it. Also, all day Saturday, February 25th, we'll hold our spring fishing workshop. All of these events are located at the Lansing Civic Center. That's 1 block southwest of the state capitol in Lansing. If you missed a number, you can get it by calling the Michigan Travel Bureau toll-free on Friday during working hours.
Our outdoor fair comes up the last weekend in June in Houghton Lake. What was it like last year? Let's go back to those hot days in the summer and take a look at Outdoor Fair 1988. To look at Houghton Lake, you'd think it was a normal, comfortable, sunny weekend. Just seeing water nowadays is a real treat. The weatherman had predicted thunder showers, followed by humidity with temperatures in the 90s on Friday and Saturday, but that didn't happen. As the crowds who came to town for the outdoor fair flocked into the high school, the outside temperatures weren't that devastating because it didn't turn all that humid. The air conditioning inside made the fair very comfortable, a welcome relief to not only the crowd, but the 100-plus exhibitors who displayed a variety of outdoor art and products and services. The exhibits filled the cafeteria and the gym in this modern community school facility that for 9 months of the year hears the pitter-patter of teenage feet up and down the halls. This weekend, about 10,000 people pitter-pattered their way up and down the corridors, visiting the array of representatives of clubs and organizations and businesses that service the outdoor sportsman. Commemorative Bucks of Michigan, the bearer of the Boone and Crockett scored racks for the state, had a large display. They measured antlers for hunters who brought them in and conducted seminars on how big game trophies are scored. Like I said, it was cool in the high school exhibit hall, but a few fires were burning at the muzzleloaders village down by M55. Now, these fires were approved by the DNR and the state police. They were contained and not open and were a part of the historical displays that families from all over the state set up as a part of what the muzzleloaders call the Houghton Lake Rendezvous. It's gotten to be quite a tradition that Guy and Evelyn Swan from Lansing have coordinated, and this year was the best ever. The encampments were all primitive, which means the families had authentic tents or teepees, exactly like our forefathers used in the colonial days. The muzzleloaders stayed in these camps during the fair, preparing their meals over charcoal fires, and during the days, inviting the public to look over their camps and ask questions about colonial life. It would be easy to spend a whole day looking and learning at the village, but many spectators enjoyed the reenactments. A French-Indian War mock battle has become an outdoor fair tradition, along with a colonial fashion show. Across the street from the high school, right on Houghton Lake, the Michigan Duck Hunters Association entertained crowds at the Limberlost Dock. The stars of their demonstrations were the Labrador Retrievers. Duck hunters who own retrievers spend quite a bit of time working with them, training them, getting them ready for hunting season. And learning how these dogs are trained is one of the many educational demonstrations that were ongoing at the outdoor fair. In the athletic field, Bob Garner hosted a show where a variety of other sporting breeds showed their skills. Warren Cahoon from the Bourbon Barrel Hunt Club brought several dogs, including this Brittany Spaniel that performed well pointing chucker partridges that were sitting in clumps of pine boughs. Next year, the dog show will be expanded even more with more breeds, including the popular sled dogs that didn't have any snow to plow through, but the handlers did work them on wheeled rigs around the track. Enjoying the shade of the trees in the woods next to the school, archers wended their way through a 20-target silhouette shoot hosted by the Flint Bowmen. Some targets had to be shot through obstructions, others were clear shots. But all were challenging and simulated hunting conditions, well, except for the novelty competitions. Hundreds of shooters took flings at the long shots, targets that ranged from 40 or 50 yards away to much farther than that. The long bear is out there well over 125 yards, and lobbing an arrow that far, well, it isn't practice for hunting season. It's just for fun. This arrow comes close, but it doesn't hit the Stroh's can on the bear's chest. That's the target that holds the key to the big prizes. And speaking of big prizes,
here's a $60 value donated by the good people up the road, Cheap Sports Shop, right here in Proveville. Okay, how much on that?
on Saturday at noon, the sporting goods auction for Outdoors Forever began and attracted hundreds of bargain hunters who walked away with good deals. In the auditorium on Saturday afternoon, duck callers from Michigan and as far away as Arkansas and Iowa competed in the third annual Stroh's Duck Calling Contest, an important event in the world of competitive duck calling. Behind the school, for the second year in a row, we drew huge crowds with our shooting shows. Norm and Dave Blaker and Ron LeClaire demonstrated muzzle loaders and longbows, while the modern cartridge weapons were demonstrated by shotgunners Dave Strickland and Harry Reinfelder, handgunners Cliff Adams and Rick Milborn and Tim Farragon. Harry's been practicing this trick 5 clay pigeons in short order. Tim Farragon closes the bolt on a Glazer safety slug, a bullet that has maximum impact but doesn't penetrate the target. Watch. It exploded the milk jug, but didn't touch the watermelon that was propped behind it. Harry Reinfelder sprays milk jugs with a machine gun burst. Not real accurate. Machine guns are best used one shot at a time. Now here's a burst from a BAR 30-06. Didn't damage the watermelon that time. But it only takes a few hits to demolish the melon and the 5-gallon bucket. In the primitive weapon show, Ron LeClaire takes an aerial target with his feet.
All right.
Norm Blaker's longbow smokes a small target in the air. And finally, on the last show on Sunday, I managed to hit a quarter tossed into the air with my longbow. I guess that qualifies me as a trick shooter.
How about that? Oh, amazed myself.
An enjoyable outdoor fair, and one I thank all participants for being a part of.
What genetic behavioral change in wild pheasants has been noted by hunters over the past 20 years? The tendency to run has become a predominant characteristic of wild pheasants in recent years. Hunters have harvested the roosters that tend to hold close and to flush, leaving the running roosters to survive and breed.
Susan Morrow from Frankenmuth, you sent us a recipe that's going to go down in history as a classic. Fish Supreme is the name of it. And Kathy Beitler, what did you use in this recipe?
This is steelhead. You could use salmon or lake trout.
Boy, that is light-colored steelhead.
It is, very. And you want to line a broiler pan with aluminum foil. You could use a grill on top of that instead of aluminum foil. And it's got some different ingredients. It's got Parmesan cheese, your lemon juice, yogurt, nutmeg, onions, and cooked spinach. It's cooked and chopped, and then it's got egg yolk mixed up in it.
Kind of a high cholesterol deal.
Yes,
for
very.
people who don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And nutmeg.
Uh-huh.
Okay, this ingredient is going to come into play in just a moment, folks.
And about a quarter cup of yogurt and some lemon juice. And this is going to actually just make a filling.
I tasted this filling, Kath, before you put it on the fish, and I loved it.
Oh, this would be great on anything. I think it'd be good on rabbit, wild game, just about anything.
It would be a great dip.
Yes,
very
it'd
frankly.
have to cook a little bit first, but yes, it'd be very good. And just go ahead and put that on the fish, and then pop it back in the oven for a few minutes.
Now, this is called Fish Supreme. It should be called Fish Surprise because Bob Garner's reaction is the biggest surprise of all.
There's some spice, and I don't know what that spice is, but there's just something I can't tolerate.
Every time we have it, too, you have the same reaction. Nutmeg.
Is that it?
Nutmeg?
Yes.
Oh, man.
That makes this terrific. Bob, set this one out. I think
it's great.
No, don't. I'll eat that in a minute, but seriously.
I think it's great. But I like nutmeg.
I like nutmeg.
Every time we have a recipe that has nutmeg in it,
Is
he's
that
crazy over it.
Eggnog is fine to have nutmeg in, but nutmeg on fish in this amount, no thanks.
We had
This
a couple
has
months ago.
spinach with what, Parmesan cheese or something?
Parmesan cheese and yogurt.
Onions? On yogurt? Oh, man.
Folks, this is one of those in 100 I just don't like.
Is
I'm
that
sure it's
right?
fine
Can you
for other
believe it?
people, but I just don't
Folks,
like it.
If you like nutmeg at all, you're going to love this recipe. If Bob could just get past that. This is terrific.
I think it's great.
I'm still chewing on the first piece.
We finally get enough of this to eat, Kath. That's great.
Have at it.
We're going to have more nutmeg recipes.
We are.
Have at it.
All the ingredients for tonight's recipe, including Bob Garner's nutmeg, are in the January-February issue of our Outdoor Digest magazine. The Outdoors Forever section has ideas for lifelong hunting and fishing. The show pages contain the mailbags and quizzes. A calendar of Outdoors Club events feature the museum and our fishing workshop, along with an entry form and rules for the Stroh's Hunting and Fishing Awards. Plus, articles on hunting knives, the world of wildlife art, and rifling's effect on bullets by shooting expert Jim Carmichael. For the January-February issue, along with information on subscribing, just write to me at Fred Trost Outdoors Club, P.O. Box 1775, East Lansing, Michigan 48826. It's free for the asking. Thinking about fishing this weekend? Well, I have a few tips from our guides around the state. There hasn't been much happening this last weekend in the western end of the UP because of the rough weather. There's been some slush on the ice. We're headed up to Bay de Noc tomorrow. We hope to catch some of those 10, maybe 12-inch perch in Bay de Noc. They're getting a couple walleye. That seems to be the story for walleye, for steelhead, for pike around the state. No real hot spots, 1 to 2, 1 to 2. That's what we find just about every place. Amaldina's getting 2 to 3 steelhead in the Manistee River, a little better than average. The best averages come from 6th Street Dam, where there's a handful of anglers. One of them, John Hesse, he got 4 within an hour this past weekend. Not too much happening in other areas. Oh, they're getting 75 to 108 to 10-inch perch in Saginaw Bay. A couple of walleye in that area, too. The problem in the south has been for rabbit hunters and everybody else, the snow has been coming and going. Ice has been coming and going. We do have 12 inches of ice on Houghton Lake, up to 24 inches of snow in the northern lower. 12 inches of snow and up to 18 inches of ice, Muskong Bay, 18 inches of ice in Bay de Noc, same thing on Lake Gogebic, and 3 feet of snow on the western end of the UP. Look at what that's done to the deer severity index. Much tougher than the past few years. It's in the low 20s. We look to 100 to be the point where there's deer starvation. They're moving towards the yarding areas. We hope it isn't too tough for them. I hope it's not a tough weekend for you either. Get outdoors if you can. It's a great place to be. See you next week. Michigan Outdoors was brought to you statewide by the East Michigan Chevy Value Leaders, the nation's top-selling group of Chevrolet car and truck dealers, including Ross Moody Chevrolet in Lapeer, Owen Motors in Ortonville, and Scott Chevrolet Olds in Cass City.
Major funding for this program was provided by Stroh. By joining together as partners to preserve our natural treasures, together we ensure our right to enjoy them. Stroh, partners in preserving America's outdoor heritage.
Next week on Michigan Outdoors, we're going to have a classic show. Bob Garner is going to be back in the chow bag again. We have a recipe for salmon bisque that was terrific. Bob Garner just gave it top rating, so you're going to want to catch that. Also, you're going to want to catch some fish with us out on the ice. We're going to head off of Escanaba, Bay de Noc, and that Great Lakes water to see if we can't pull some lunkers through the ice. So join me, the Michigan Outdoors gang, next week right here on PBS.